Hi, my name is David Hawking. Today's presentation on the Phoenicia Ship Expeditions of 2009 to 2010 and 2019 to 2020. The Phoenicia ship was built and organized by Captain Philip Beale, and he wanted to replicate how the Phoenicians circumnavigated Africa. So he used the technology that they had in 600 BC to create his single sailing ship. The first expedition started from the Oman area and in the end of October in 2009. And the first stop that they had was in an island called the Cumorah Islands. And from there he went on over to the Cape town in South Africa, and then the winds took him straight toward North America. He wanted to circumnavigate Africa, so he had to fight to get the ship to move toward the east, and he did that, and he was able to arrive back into Beirut, Lebanon in October of 2010. So the entire trip took less than a year. The second trip was conducted just recently in 2019, where they left Tunisia in Carthage, and they stopped at the Canary Islands, and then they kept on going westward, and they finally ended up in Fort Lauderdale on February the 4th, 2020. Here I have a page that I've taken from the annotated edition of the Book of Mormon that provides some insights in the probable route taken by the Lehi's family when they left Jerusalem, and then after 8 years of journeying in the desert, they arrived at that place they call Bountiful, and that's near the place where the Phoenicia ship, captained by Captain Beale, left and departed. Along the route of the Lehi's family, which included the Ishmael family, in 1 Nephi chapter 16 verse 34 it says, "And it came to pass that Ishmael died and was buried in a place which is called Nahum." Now it's interesting that they have found altars in that location that you see that I've identified as NaNHM, where that underneath that altar, the picture of the altar or the red circle, that is the inscription that's there. So Nahum is a root, as a Hebrew root. NHM is found repeatedly in the Bible, and it relates to sorrow, hunger, consoling, mourning. And it appears 25 times in the narratives of the book, and in every case it's associated with death. Also, by adding the vowel A to NHM, the word Nahum means to mourn, to come to terms with a death. Scholars consider this root perfectly appropriate when used to refer to a place of mourning and burial. The name is archaeologically confirmed from inscriptions found on 3 altars in that Yemen area, and they are now firmly dated to about 700 BC. The site was first excavated by a German team in 1997. The altars inscribed in the Sabian script give the tribal name of NHM as the origin of the man who donated them, a certain son of Sodom, son of Nahum, the Nimite. The temple excavation is located about 25 miles from the largest known burial complex in Arabia, itself first excavated by a French team in 1999. Multiple other occurrences of the tribal place name are now also known from the same area, and both the tribe and its location are known by the same name today. What's interesting is that when Lehi's party left Jerusalem around 600 BC, they may have also stopped at the Cumorah Islands. So he states, Mormon, who is a descendant of Lehi, in Mormon 6:2 he says, "And I, Mormon, wrote an epistle unto the king of the Lamanites, and desired of him that he would grant unto us that we might gather together our people unto the land of Cumorah, by a hill which was called Cumorah, and there we could give them battle." Now what's interesting is that the Hebrew way of writing has no vowels. So the key word here would be Cumorah, and it could be Comoros, but the consonants are C, M, and R. And notice that the Book of Mormon has the AH sound. Previously I talked about the sound being very prevalent in Hebrew writings, Mosiah, Zedekiah, Hezekiah, and so forth. The second trip was from 2019 to 2020. What's interesting is Captain Philip Beale stated if anyone could have done this trip before Columbus, it was the Phoenicians. And what's important here is that they left Tunisia on September 29th and 2019, and then they ended up in the Canary Islands in Tenerife. And eventually they worked their way over to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Now, why is that important? Turns out that in the Canary Island there's a area called Tenerife, and there are rock art. And off to the left, far left, I have an example of a large stone rock with lots of inscriptions, and I have in a circle in red a script, and that script is what we think is ancient Berber script that's in the vertical format, and I have it in the center. You can see like a dash, a zero, and some marks, and kind of like a square U, and then two horizontal vertical marks. And again, that's on this island called Tenerife, and I have it in the red box below that image. And off to the right, I have how those marks in that Berber vertical script has certain letters of our alphabet. And you can see that it has Z, A, H, M, L. Since there are no vowels in between, we could say that it says Zarahemla. So why does that have any importance here? Well, if Mulek, which is the son of Zedekiah, escaped Jerusalem with his mother and the party that she had, they may have taken passage on a Phoenician ship. And if they had done that, they could have stopped by, as many others have done. For example, the Canary Islands also served as a port departure for Christopher Columbus, as well as countless Spanish ships that followed. So if that is a stop-off place before you go eastward, westward toward the United States or to America, it may be that they picked up this script, and it meant that that's why the word Zarahemla has been found within the Book of Mormon. Well, we're going to read in the book of Omni, "Behold, I, Amalek, the son of Abinadab, behold, I will speak unto you somewhat concerning Mosiah, who is made king over the land of Zarahemla." So we get the name Zarahemla in Omni. That's in the small plates. Also, it continues, "And at that time when Mosiah discovered them, they had become exceeding numerous. Nevertheless, they had had many wars and serious contentions, and had fallen by the sword from time to time. And their language had become corrupted, and they had brought no records with them, and they denied the being of their Creator. And Mosiah, nor the people of Mosiah, could understand them. But it came to pass that Mosiah caused that they should be taught in his language. And it came to pass that after they were taught in the language of Mosiah, Zarahemla gave a genealogy of his fathers, according to his memory, and they are written, but not in these plates." We don't have their genealogy because we don't have their record on the plates that Mormon is editing. So how does this relate? So if anyone could have done it before Columbus, it was the Phoenicians. So let's see who the Phoenicians are. Phoenician boats sailed easily from Tyre and Sidon, two leading Phoenician cities that produce Murex purple dye, both now in modern Lebanon, to Gibraltar and Tangier, says Beale. That 2,000-odd mile voyage is about the same distance as across the Atlantic. And here we read in Alma chapter 2, verse 15, "And it came to pass that the Amalekites came upon the hill Omnihu, which was east of the river Sidon, which ran by the land of Zarahemla, and there they began to make war with the Nephites. One of the traditions of the Native American tribes is a group called the Lenape. They are the Delaware people or nation. And according to the tradition handed down to them by their ancestors, they resided many hundred years ago in a very distant country in the western part of the American continent. They determined on migrating to the eastward, and accordingly set out in a body, and then after a long journey and many nights' encampment, that is, halts of 1 year at a place, they arrived on the Namesi Sipu, which is translated as Mississippi, where they fell in with the Minegwa, or the Iroquois or Five Nation groups of Native Americans. And that's coming from a book by John Yates. Now, the river of fish, the Namesi means a fish, and Sipu means a river. Also, if you look at the map on the upper right, we can see that Sidon is right on the coast of the Mediterranean Sea, and the Hebrew meaning of Sidon means fishery. So if we have a little bit of review about Mulek, and now will you dispute that Jerusalem was also destroyed? Will you say that the sons of Zedekiah were not slain, all except it were Mulek? Yea, and do you not behold that the seed of Zedekiah are with us, and they are driven out of the land of Jerusalem? We read that in Helaman 8, chapter 8, verse 21. And here we get a quote from Hugh Nibley. He says, "Nowhere are we told that Mulek was the leader of the company, and indeed at his age that would be unthinkable. His father Zedekiah, who reigned from 597 to 586 BC, was only about 31 when he was taken prisoner and blinded. But as the sole survivor of the royal family and their heir presumptive to the throne, he was certainly the most important person in the company, a source of legitimate pride to the group. The name tells us everything. Mulek is not found anywhere in the Bible, but any student of Semitic languages will instantly recognize it as the best known form of diminutive or character of a term of affection and endearment meaning little king. What could they call the uncrowned child, last of his line, but their little king? And what could they call themselves but Mulekiah or Mulekites?" So we have a premise here. If Mulek's small party that escaped Jerusalem were passengers on a Phoenician ship, then their language would have been corrupted over centuries if the dominant language was Phoenician. So we can read in Omni, verse 17, it says, "And at that time that Messiah discovered them, they had become exceedingly numerous. Nevertheless, they had had many wars and serious contentions, and had fallen by the sword from time to time, and their language had been corrupted, and they had brought no records with them, and they denied the being of their Creator and Messiah, nor the people of Messiah could understand them." So I have on the left here the Phoenician alphabet. You can see how the consonants B, G, D, and so forth have these different scripts to them, and A has an apostrophe, and O, that's a vowel, has another apostrophe. You can see where S has a different sound depending on how you say the S. So anyways, we can see that that's the script. Now, are there any evidences of Phoenician scripts found in the Michigan relics? Now, the Michigan relics were found in the early 1800s all the way up through 1900s. Thousands and thousands of them were found not only in Michigan but also throughout the Midwest. And here I have some representations of some of the relics that they have found. Some of them are on black slate, some of them are on copper, and it's a controversial subject. In fact, I show a link here to a TV video, Hoax or History, on this Michigan tablet. And one of the authors of that has reviewed these Michigan tablets says the inscriptions are largely a horrible mixture of Phoenician Egyptian and Ancient Greek characters taken at random from a comparative table of alphabets such as found in the back of the Webster's Dictionary. Now that's a common take on what they have found. However, these scripts are found throughout, as I say, the Midwest, and they encompass over 40,000. So it'd be difficult for one person to fabricate all of these artifacts that were found over a long period of time, expanded period of time. Here we have a picture of a photo of a Michigan copper plate that appears to be the Ten Commandments. Etzenhauser has it in his collection, and to the right you can see that David Lindsley, who is an artist, did the best he could to record on a clean sheet of paper what those characters look like. And again, we can see that there's some similarities between the Phoenician scripts and Iberian scripts and ancient scripts. So based on these characters, there's another character that we can look at, and these are the characters that were copied by John Whitmer on the Book of Mormon. And this is taken from the Joseph Smith papers, but notice that these characters are unique. Some of them have kind of a look of a Phoenician script to them, but not quite. But again, we have a solid foundation of knowing what was on the metal plates of the Book of Mormon. So if we look at those characters, there is a group of Native Americans called the Micmac or the Mi'kmaq, and they have a reformed Egyptian writing script, and it closely resembles the characters that were copied by John Whitmer from the small plates of Nephi. And if you look at Mormon 9 verse 32, it says, "Now behold, we have written this record according to our knowledge, in the characters which are called among us the reformed Egyptian, being handed down and altered by us according to our manner of speech." And if you look at the center box, you can see what those characters look like at the very top of the lines, and then you can see the Micmac language, the interpretation, and off to the right, in one column, the first column to the left, the Nephite characters that were copied by John Whitmer, and then next to it are the Micmac characters. And you can see there's quite a number of them that are correlate almost a one-to-one. So when we look at the title page of the Book of Mormon, this is definitely in Oliver Cowdery's handwriting. And again, I got this on the Joseph Smith papers, and it indicated that it was indeed Oliver Cowdery's handwriting. And if you look, I have in red boxes all of the words that end in the letter D. So the letter D has a hooked detail. It's got an open face to it, and of the D itself, and then the tail is an open tail, and it's hooked. So you see the word Lord, you have God, you've got Lord and Lord. You can see that they're all, they have land. All of these are hooked D's. So now we can compare a manuscript, again from the Joseph Smith papers. This is a revelation that we now call Doctrine and Covenants, section 107, and it's in the handwriting of two individuals. It's John Whitmer and Oliver Cowdery. And in the footnotes, it indicates that there is an ampersand, and in that ampersand is where the two scribers, people who during the scribes, have changed. So I have it as a vertical red line. So Oliver Cowdery's hooked a D. You can see land according. So those D's are hooked, and then where that vertical red line is, from there on, it starts among the elders of the church. And as you go through, you've got the word enlarged, appointed, handed, and carried, priesthood. All of those I have in the blue-green boxes, and they have a tailed D. and this is in the handwriting of John Whitmer. So now, based on that document, this is the original manuscript of the Book of Mormon, and this is from 1 Nephi chapter 2, verses 2 through 9. And I've got an excerpt. I've kind of enlarged it here. But in the yellow underline, I have John Whitmer's tailed D. And then in the red underlined, I have Oliver Cowdery's hooked D. And so here we now know that John Whitmer was a scribe for Joseph Smith in Fayette, New York. So therefore, First Nephi is coming in Fayette, New York. So here are the both handwritings again from First Nephi. Oliver Cowdery has the letter D on the hook on the top. This is the preface. You can see land, and you can see that that has a hook D. And then you've got 1 Nephi chapter 2, verse 3. He was obedient unto the word of the Lord, and he did as the Lord. And all of those D's that end in the words that end in D have a hook D. Whereas John Whitmer, the letter D has no hook on the top. So again, 1 Nephi 2 through 10 through 11, verses 10 through 11, you have Lord, behold, did. And then in 1 Nephi chapter 4, verse 20, I commanded him in the voice of Laban. Again, look at those D's. Those D's are not hooked. They have a tail to them. So as we look at the Book of Mormon, it's a very complicated book in how it was structured and how it was put together. And not only that, but also how it got translated is not simple. So for example, Joseph Smith called the plates that he found in the stone box the original Book of Mormon. And it was Martin Harris who was his first scribe, and he was the scribe for the beginning of that original Book of Mormon that were found in the stone box. It was called the Book of Lehi. He ended up losing those pages that included the Book of Lehi. As a result, Joseph Smith lost his ability to translate, but eventually he got the Urim Thummim back, and the plates were restored to him, and Oliver Cowdery came. So Oliver Cowdery scribed for him for the plates of Mormon, which included, the Book of Mosiah, Alma, Helaman, and so forth. When they finished Moroni, they wanted to go back and retranslate what was lost by Martin Harris, the Book of Lehi, but they were commanded not to, that there'd be other records. So the other records came to them in Fayette, New York. So the small plates of Nephi were obtained in Fayette, New York, and John Whitmer was, as we've shown, a scribe for a few of the verses in the first chapters of 1 Nephi. The characters that he transcribed from those metal plates then must be from 1 Nephi. So as we look through and find what these characters have meaning, any meanings related to them or assigned to them, it more than likely has those meanings related to the story that's found in 1 Nephi. Another point to consider is that the text of the Book of Mormon describes many of the importance of living the law of Moses, and I have in the annotated edition of the Book of Mormon these insight pages that give you some perspective of how you can compare what the practicing Jews, how they think that they are living the law of Moses and practicing that in Israel. So off to the left you see that one of the commandments is that they to have fringes on the borders of their garments. And if you go to Jerusalem, you'll see these prayer shawls, and you can see the fringes on them. And if you look at the bottom part of that insight page, I have some pictures of Native Americans. The tall Indian to the left, he's got a prayer shawl, and look at the bottom there. It's definitely has fringes on it. Right next to him on the bottom, there's a family, and that family, that lady has again a prayer shawl on her as well. And then those other women that have their different clothing, they all have their fringes on them. And then to the right, I have, if you go to Israel, you'll see these practicing Jews with a head tefillin and a payot on their style of their hair. The head tefillin is always to have the Lord on in their front of their eye, front of their mind, and the payot was to have their borders should be curled, and so that's called a payot. And again, if you look at the Native American, some of their dress standards and hairstyles resemble a payot and the curling of the hair. Also to the left, there are some seasons of the year. They had 4 seasons. Those seasons were required in the keeping of the law of Moses. And at the bottom, you see across from Nauvoo, Illinois, there's what we call potentially a Zarahemla temple site. And in that location, they found a spotted bee balm, and that spotted bee balm was used to reduce fevers. And in some seasons, they had fevers, more than likely due to malaria, and that spotted bee balm extract could be used to reduce those fevers. Off to the right, you can see some of the descriptions of the places of entrance that is talked about in the Book of Mormon, how they could be a killing field for those who came into their places of security in their walls. And these are drawings that come from the Davis and Squires booklet, and it parallels again what we read in the Book of Mormon. Also, Joseph Smith in his Wentworth letter says the remnant of who are the Lamanites are the Indians that now inhabit this country. So here I have some representative pictures of what Native Americans would have looked like back near his time, and as you can see, they seem to have the characteristics of perhaps having the heritage of the Jewish group, with their European type style facial features. And then off to the right here, I have kind of a new insert that I put into that will be in a new edition of the annotated Book of Mormon, called the Solar Eclipse Cut in Stone. These are Michigan relics that have been uncovered during the early 1800s, late 1800s, that are made out of slate or copper plates or metal plates, as well as stone. And these images have images of Book of Mormon themes, but there's also other themes. And for example, this one here shows that on a particular date, and that date would be July 27th in the year 352 AD, that there was a full solar eclipse in near Lima, Ohio. And this person who has witnessed that was probably in the Michigan area within 100 miles, saw that eclipse and made record of it. Since the eclipse darkened the sun, he could see the stars. Immediately thereafter, he saw these meteor showers as well as a new moon. And all of this was validated using NASA programming based on the angle at 67 degrees of that eclipse. And sure enough, that occurred definitely in that year, and that's about, again, in the Book of Mormon timeline. So again, these correlations on culture show that the expeditions that the Phoenicia went on replicated what we believe that is found in the Book of Mormon. I'd like to thank you for looking at this presentation. All of my annotated series of books can be located at beaconlightbooks.com. And you can contact me at drhockking@gmail.com, and that is my email address. Thank you for watching, and God bless you.